Tonight, our scripture reading begins the Christmas story. It is found in the Gospel according to Luke, the second chapter, verses 1 through 7. Hear now what God would say to you. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. May God bless to us the hearing of these ancient words. MythBusters is a science entertainment television program. It was created and is produced by Australia's Beyond Television Productions for the Discovery Channel, and it actually almost never made it to the airwaves. The series concept was created for the Discovery Channel as Tall Tales or True by Australian writer and producer Peter Rees of Beyond Productions in the year 2002. Discovery actually initially rejected the proposal because they had just commissioned a series on the same topic. So Rees refined the pitch to focus on testing key elements of the stories rather than just retelling stories. The MythBusters usually test myths in a two-step process. By the end of each episode, the myths are either rated busted, plausible, or confirmed. Myths are rated as busted when the myth's results cannot be replicated either through the parameters that are described or through even exaggerated ones. Often when a myth is declared busted, the team will attempt to see what it actually would require to replicate the results of the myth through scientific means, discarding all the parameters of the original myth. This is commonly referred to in the series as the MythBusters way. And it reveals that the circumstances required to accurately recreate a busted myth are either unlikely or highly unlikely or impossible even with the facts that are presented or even with the equipment that people can use. Plausible is given under a few circumstances. The myth's results can only be replicated by expanding some of the parameters of the myth, or this might be due to facts that the myth has changed through time as the story has been told and retold time and again. But also, it can also mean that materials have had to be substituted for others in some of the cases as a matter of necessity during the course of the myth being tested. But the new materials are always similar to the ones that they changed them out for. Now, the MythBusters are able to recreate or able to closely recreate the myth's purported outcome, then it receives the fact that it is confirmed. A confirmed myth is usually corroborated with documented evidence of actual occurrences. If the myth lacks any of the specific scenarios, the MythBusters will test every reasonable scenario, and just one of them has to be enough to confirm the myth. It is because of this groundbreaking show that we've learned invaluable lessons, such as the impossibility of being decapitated by a ceiling fan, or that if you punch a shark in the face, it doesn't actually leave you alone, or the importance of knowing that you can talk on your cell phone while pumping gas and you will not die in a massive explosion caused by sparks from your cell phone. So it dawned on me as we were talking about the show one day with a group of friends that there's a lot of things about Christmas and the Christmas story. Some of them are myths that should be busted. Some are plausible, and some are, without any doubt, true. So believe me, over the next 3 weeks as we go through this series, I will not be working to destroy every love and tradition of Christmas that you have. But rather, I want us to live more faithfully, and sometimes I think to develop our faith more deeply, it means that we have to answer or at least ask some of those difficult questions. And there are a lot of questions around the birth of the Messiah. So I believe that it is in our knowledge and in asking those questions that our faith grows more deeply. Tonight we start by looking at the idea of there being, quote, no room in the inn. This understanding comes because everyone who was under Roman rule had to be registered. It was a census, if you will. But it wasn't fill out a form and mail it in. You actually had to go to your hometown, and you had to register. And so this meant that Joseph, because he was of the lineage of King David, went to Bethlehem. And we are told at the end of our scripture reading tonight that while in Bethlehem, Mary gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth. And she laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. There have been legends told about what it must have been like to have been the innkeeper who had to turn them away. But what's interesting to note is that nowhere in Scripture is an innkeeper even mentioned. Also, the Greek word for inn refers to, ironically, an upper room in a house, not a hotel like we think of. And furthermore, when we talk about Jesus being born in a stable, again, if you read the passage, a stable is never mentioned in the Bible. And in that time and in that place, animals were more often kept actually in caves, not buildings that had been built like stables. And again, the Bible doesn't specify what exactly it was either way. So while Scripture does tell us very clearly that there was no room in the inn, I am going to declare tonight's understandings of Jesus being born in a stable because there was no room in the hotel as busted. But I want to go further than that, because I think this first part of the nativity story, I think it's about us wanting to be home for Christmas. I think this part of the story has a lot to do with that innate feeling that seems to come over us during this time of the year that we have to be home, be it a physical place or to be at home in our hearts. And that's why I think that longing seems greatest at Christmas. We know that song, I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. It's Bing Crosby that made that song famous. Here's a brief clip of the song just to remind you and to get you in the spirit.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree.
You see, just hearing those words for so many of us can start a holiday celebration. Because Christmas is much more than just about a baby born in a stable or a cave. It's actually about God finding us in Bethlehem. You see, we didn't choose to be with God. God chose to be with us. Emmanuel, God with us. Wherever we may be and whatever we have done or whatever has been done to us, it is in God's good time that our lost home will be restored to us. We will climb into the loving arms of the one who loves us so greatly and so deeply and so beyond our imagining that we will feel that comfort. We will feel that love. And that promise of being held in the arms of God speaks directly to the child that lives in each one of us. I don't know about you, but I don't need psychologists to tell me or to write articles about that what children fear the most is abandonment. Because I actually think that's what adults fear the most. I mean, think about it. There is no dread so terrible as the fear that everyone we know and everyone we love will go away and leave us. It's not just children that struggle with that. But in a very real sense, none of us are ever truly home for Christmas, because being home for Christmas in the truest sense would mean that we are with the one who loves us more than our imagination can even allow us to understand. Preaching professor Fred Craddock described the journey as our earthly life in the nomadic experience of living in a tent. It's just temporary. We're all just passing through this life on our way to our true home. But even more than that, Christmas isn't just about Mary and Joseph coming home to Bethlehem and finding no room. It's not even about our own desire for homecoming. It's about God coming home. We couldn't go to God, so God came to us. You see, when we hear the song, "I'll Be Home for Christmas," we hear Bing Crosby or some modern pop artist. But when the writer of Luke hears the words, "I'll be home for Christmas," Luke hears God singing. So tonight, while some of our traditional understandings of Christmas may be busted, what will never change and what will never be different is the fact that we long to be home for Christmas. But in that longing, the gospel, the good news, is that we don't have to physically go anywhere. We don't have to sit at a Norman Rockwell-esque feast. Rather, we can simply be wrapped and enfolded in the arms of the one who loves us so much that God sent God's only child to an upper room, to be born estranged from his people and yet loved so greatly that at the end, not even death could overcome him. Yes, my friends, tonight as we begin our journey to Christmas, I have no doubt in my heart whatsoever that this Christmas, this will be the one where we will go home.